Good morning, everybody. Welcome you all to yet another webinar on insider trading series that we are conducting at Mehta and Mehta. Today, we would be talking about insider trading compliances with respect to mutual fund units. And today, who better than Ranganathan sir to take it ahead for all of us? I'll give a brief introduction about Ranganathan sir. He is a corporate law advisor. His earlier stints were with MCure Pharmaceuticals and Edelweiss Financial Services and the Tata Group. He's a fellow member of Institute of Company Secretaries of India, ICMA, also being a lawyer. He has 32 years of experience in corporate field, encompassing investment banking, governance company law, corporate restructuring, NBFC, ARC, and allied corporate laws. He's a member of the expert group on secretarial standards of ICSI. He was a member of the Company Law Review Committee constituted by MCA to review the Companies Act 2013. He's also a senior faculty with various business schools, professional institutions, and has conducted sessions and presented papers in various forums, both in India and abroad. Thank you, Ranganathan sir. We are really grateful for you to conduct this session for us today. Apart from that, our usual Sudhakar sir would not be able to attend this session due to some emergency at his place. We also have Mr. Bala. So, Bala sir, please take it ahead.
Good morning to all of you. I have a great pleasure in welcoming you for yet another important session on the PAT regulations. In this particular day, we are going to talk the complaints relating to mutual funds. As you are all aware, initially when the regulation was introduced, mutual funds were not made part of it because it was actually talking this is applicable to the listed company, that too also only for the securities trading. But now, over a period of time, the enormous amount of the voluminous transaction which has been happening in the mutual fund, and again there are various schemes, close-ended, open-ended, etc. So somehow the regulator wisdom, they thought they should actually bring the regulation governing the mutual funds. Probably is November 2022 regulation, which actually specifically introduced about the mutual fund. And they have rather inserted a separate chapter 3A in respect to the mutual funds. The moment I also read this, I thought, first of all, why this mutual fund is coming under the governance? Because is it not increasing the compliance burden of the AMCs in the first place? What is it? Second thing is when we talk about the listed company, then again mutual fund, we have a listed, unlisted, it is applicable to both or not. All these questions are tough. But after going through the regulation amendment which has actually come, I could make out actually this regulation which is brought in MF under the threshold of the PAT regulations is not for the entire regulation, it is only for selective chapters. They want to have the control. Specifically, there are two particular chapters which are actually applicable besides. There are certain other things, but of course it is in the restricted sense, not the entire regulation is actually applicable. Arising out of it, I could also notice what they are supposed to take forward. As we have discussed in the last two sessions also, only thing is relating to the unpublished sensitive information. So that means how do they maintain the unpublished sensitive information, their confidentiality, and again identifying for the code of conduct which is applicable for all the intermediaries, specifically which is actually spelled out. And of course, they are expected to have the internal control mechanism, and which they are supposed to affirm every year to the audit committee. Besides that, there is a disclosure requirement is also there. As you know, the insider trading code, we also have the pre-clearance, the method of pre-clearances, the format in which the pre-clearances to be done, contract trade, all the things are all applicable to the mutual funds. So I think today Mr. Renganathan, who is a very renowned person, I know him more than 25 years actually. And he has been in New Bombay. When I met him for the first time, he was actually, associated with the New Bombay ICSI chapter chairman that time. Very well-known person, and with his greater experience in this field, I think we will get various doubts clarified today in respect of the applicability and in respect of what are the specific charters applicable, what are the do's and don'ts which are there, what are the other requirements. I am very sure this session is going to be definitely a very knowledge-adding session for the people. Because normally the investing public, for the safer investment, they go for the mutual funds. Any common person, they also think it is safer to go, because why to unnecessarily take undue risk at this market situation, we will go to the mutual fund. That is the thing. So in the light of that, this regulation is a very important regulation. And we get various clarifications with the expert experience from Mr. Renganathan on this. Give a preliminary introduction about the topics, and then we'll move forward.
My good friend Mr. Malik also. Thank you, sir. So thanks for Mehta&Mehta for inviting me to this webinar. I think it's almost after 2 years again I've been requested to advise this. Earlier it was on amendments to LODR briefly. I and Shailesh Raja Deksha, we used to have it some 2 years back. And so thanks to the Mehta&Mehta and Dipti and Atul especially. Thanks to them for inviting me to this session. Okay, I think Bala sir had given a very brief introduction. I think people have already started in the chat box asking about so many things. Just request you to please wait for a few minutes and then let's take it forward, friends. So first and foremost is, we all know about pitch regulations, and it's been involved for whatever years, right from 2020. But what is that? When these regulations were introduced, it was primarily aimed only on the equity shares. But later on, when it was slightly, it was completely amended in 2015, even the debt instrument scheme were added a part of the, the coverage under the PIT regulations. Because the reason being that right from 2008, we had what you call as the debt issue regulations coming into force, and a lot of companies started issuing both on private and private placement as well as to the IPO route. And that's the reason it was extended to a debt instrument as well. Okay, now there is something called, I think Bala sir nicely covered for the retail people, there is something called the mutual funds, where people try to invest. So let me just give you a small brief for a minute, how the mutual fund, even the structure works, and what's the difference, in terms of when you talk about the equity shares and the units of mutual funds today. Right from mutual funds, when those regulations were introduced in 1996, the units of mutual funds were part of the definition of security. First, let's understand that. Yes, no doubt. Okay. Secondly, in terms of in a fundraising activity for a corporate, where corporates require money, they issue shares and get the money into its kitty, and that's why a lot of obligations on the part of the company to perform for the benefiting the entire shareholders, or today what we call the stakeholders. So here the entire responsibility is on the company. Now, typically when an investor, especially a retail investor, when he wants to go and invest in an equity, he or she doesn't know about the pros and cons of investing in that. And typically, because an equity has its embedded feature, the main feature being the most riskiest of capital market instruments that is available is the equity shares. And secondly, once we talk about the riskiest of instruments, it also has what you call as the most value creating instrument, or rather the only value creating instrument. So on one hand, you have value creation. On the other hand, you have the risk attached to it. Now, a common man doesn't understand the significance of this, or the nuances of trading in the equity markets, and that's why this concept of mutual fund came into being. And what typically happens is the mutual fund which floats different schemes, which when it floats different schemes, it is seeking money from different investors, wherein they will be in a position to allocate the money that they have received into different segments, different different scripts. So the collation of all those scripts at the end of the day, divided by the number of units, number of shares or the scripts that you have, that the mutual fund had invested, would give you the net asset value of each unit. So here it's a combo of different type of different equity instruments, different, sometimes now that's also extended to debt instruments, both listed and unlisted, predominantly in listed space, but whether it's debt and both equity. So that is how since somebody and a guy who is well versed with investment, the models and the way the fund managers can deploy those funds and reap good benefits for the investors. Since it's being entrusted to a guy, there is something called, this is the entire flow of or managing the show of investments is done by the AMC, which is the asset management company. But since the investors have entrusted that responsibility to some fund manager, there is some other entity within the mutual fund which is called as the trustee company. Ultimately, the trustee company is mainly responsible for all these things. The trustee company is so you have a trustee company to oversee or oversee the functioning of the mutual funds. That's why you have two structures in a mutual funds. Let's understand that. Now, because throughout the session, or whenever you talk about or whenever you see any mutual fund things, you also see the AMC part of it, because they are the trustees, and in case of an equity, the board of directors are the trustees, right? So in this case, it's the trustee who runs, who gives the directions to the fund manager, and the fund managers run the show. Now let's see how slowly this has taken shape. And today, when we are talking about extending the PIT regulations to the mutual fund units, how does it work? How is it? All those things is what we have to see. So, though it's a very, very new topic, friends, when called me and said that you need to take on, I did not hesitate. I did not hesitate to talk, because it's almost more than 8-9 years since I had vetted a scheme, because I'm no more attached to the mutual fund side. But at the same time, being in the capital markets, one should be aware of the developments that are happening on all fronts. So again, the other terminology that you'll be keeping on listening in the mutual fund is the open-ended scheme, the closed-ended scheme, which has to be listed, friends. Closed-ended schemes have to be listed. Open-ended, you have the option. The mutual fund, the AMC has got the option to do that. But then the second, you also hear about a word called redemption of units, closure of a particular scheme, and switching from to different schemes. All those things are very common terminologies that are usually used in the mutual fund space. So towards during the session, somewhere down the line, I'll be touching upon certain things and how do we cover it. Okay, now that's the background which I just wanted to throw, and then slowly let me start getting into the regulatory perspective from an insider trading point of view. Okay, so friends, with that small note, when we talk about the PIT regulations, which have been the amended regulations, which have come now as a part of Chapter 2A. First and foremost is somebody has already raised this issue of what all chapters of PIT are applicable. Yes, let me first tell you, first and foremost, let us understand that these regulations are yet to be notified. I think that's the biggest point that one needs to be, because still a lot of discussions are going on between AMFI and SEBI as to the, the contents of these regulations. And because as we go on during the session, you will understand, I will explain certain nuances that the mutual funds are going to face, So it's very difficult for certain provisions to be implemented. And that's the reason, the AMFI and SEBI are still deliberating on this, and one doesn't know when it's going to come. But having said that, to answer Shruti's, the question, what all chapters of it are applicable, Chapter 2A, which is specifically designated only to the mutual funds, units. That's one thing. Then you have what you call as Chapter 5. Chapter 3A and Chapter 5. Chapter 3A is basically, it's common for all the securities, which is nothing but the informant mechanism. When something happens, some informant, he or she has got the what do you call the medium or the mode through which he or she can approach SEBI and blow the whistle. So that chapter is completely applicable to the mutual funds. And the third is the Chapter 5, which is nothing but the miscellaneous section, again commonly applicable to all the securities. Specific, only these three chapters are, the specific chapter which is an inclusion is Chapter 2A, which is only for mutual funds. Chapter 3A is Chapter 3A is already there for all the entities, and Chapter 5 again it's there for all the entities, which is the miscellaneous section. Yes, in terms of schedules, in terms of the code of conduct schedules, you had A, B, and C. A for the listed companies, B for the intermediaries, and C for the fiduciaries. Now you have one thing called B1, Schedule B1, which is specific for the mutual funds. Hope this is the first clarity. This is yet to be notified. Secondly, what are the chapters that are applicable? It is 2A, Chapter 3A, and Chapter 5. And a new code that has come as Schedule B1. These are the first applicable thing. Now again, let's slightly rewind and go back and see why this has been introduced at this juncture. So friends, if you remember the Sodhi committee report, which initially talked about all the insider trading regulations, it very clearly talked about, very simple, any security as defined in this SCRA should be covered under the PIT regulations. But when it came to because their rationale or their contention was very simple, saying that any security which has an embedded feature of a price discovery, should be, covered under the insider trading regulations. The moment a security has a price discovery feature embedded in it, it attracts, what do you call it? It attracts let me put it this way. It gets attracted to the, what do you call, the fluctuations in that price, which can be used by the investors. And that's the reason. So the committee very clearly said that whatever is there in the securities, please include it. Okay. Now, later on, SEBI did not accept that, and they said, let us keep the mutual fund units out of it. Okay. And that's the reason it was kept aside. Now, again, going back, again, you are taking the same turn and going back, and now SEBI has started introducing this in the regulations itself. Again, I'm friends telling, it's yet to be notified. Okay, please bear in mind. Okay, but never mind. If you are in the mutual fund space, let us keep ourselves ready for the show. So having said that, so the committee said that include everything, and accordingly now this new regulations have also come into place. Now, why it was not initially and why it has come? So I always believe that every regulation, every statute is an evolving thing. It is not a static. If it is a static, then it becomes history. So every regulation or every statute is an evolving thing. And so, it all depends on a lot of, again, in the corporate accidents that take place during the course of the corporate history. So, and that's how many things happen in the last maybe right from 2017 onwards. If you see a lot of things nobody expected, even in the mutual fund, things can happen in the mutual fund space, because there predominantly the retail investors' money are being held up. Friends, it's very, very essential to know some of the basics, so that going forward we will understand. Okay, that's the reason I'm just emphasizing this. So what prompted? There are a couple of cases, 2-3 things which I just wanted to highlight here, friends. I can't name some of them, but suddenly, one of the registrars, only 2-3 registrars in India are handling the mutual funds. When suddenly, one of the registrars started redeeming a lot of investments that it had made, because it had some sort of a price sensitive information about a particular scheme. So they started redeeming it. Okay, that came to light, and once you start redeeming it, there is a panic button that is switched on, and even the retail gullible investors also will be forced to take the redemption path. Second thing, what had happened, one of the KMPs or a couple of KMPs in a mutual fund, based on the UPSA that they had in terms of one of the scripts of a particular scheme, they started trading in it, due to which they were also found guilty of doing this activity. So there is something called, friends, where the third thing what had happened in many of us might be knowing during the COVID period, that's I think between February to June 2020. Franklin Templeton, if you are invested, you would have been knowing this. Franklin Templeton, all of a sudden they closed down 6 debt schemes. All of a sudden. And so what typically happened when SEBI started investigating into it, and they started, it's not by when you close down, it's by force. You have to give back the money to the the unit holders. When SEBI started investigating to it, it was found that it's Asia Pacific head, Vivek Udwa, and his wife and I think son or daughter. All of them, what they did was they tried to do the redemption much earlier than the closure of the scheme. And so they were all levied a penalty. The schemes, and Franklin Templeton was debarred from launching any fresh debt schemes for a period of next 2 years. So till that time when the regulators were also not feeling that these things are also should be brought into the pit ambit. And that is another incident which had happened, Franklin Templeton. And last, of course, 2018, sometime again September, immediately after the ILFS fiasco, the DLF incident happened within a span of say 3 to 4 months. And how that also got triggered? Was basically one of the mutual funds. They started redeeming the units, earlier than what they had committed. And that was the trigger point for DLF. Things to the Pandora's box got opened post. But that was not an insider trading or something, but based on their own research, one of the mutual funds started redeeming it heavily, and that's the reason. Then DLF went into some other. Let's not talk on that. But these were some of the trigger points. These were the trigger points. Some of these cases which made regulators to think of. How do we control certain redemption so that these things are kept under control. So there is another unique concept, friends. You need to understand one thing. There is something called front running and also insider trading. Or these two things the same? The answer to that is absolutely no. Front running is something different. Front running is like this: when I know something about is going to happen in a particular skip, and I'm the fund manager of a mutual fund, and something is going to happen in a particular. Again, the schemes, friends, I think most of us might be knowing. Each scheme will have the money invested or money invested in different scripts. It could be a pharma, it could be a aviation, or it could be a hotel or FMCG or financial services or banks. It can have different kinds of, or a small cap or a mid cap. It could be in different forms. It could be in different forms. So a scheme constitutes different kinds of the scripts of different companies, and sometimes maybe of different industries too. That one should bear in mind. So, and that's how the NAV, that's the greatest advantage for an investor, so that his his portfolio is also getting spread to different sectors. Now, what is front running in terms of what is front running? Front running is, if I'm the fund manager, if I know that in a particular script which is forming part of my scheme, there is some movement, there is going to be, I'm aware of some UPSI that's going to happen in that particular company. I try to, either if the price is going to move, I try to buy in my personal name initially, and then place that buy order in the the mutual fund. And later on, when the prices go up, I try to sell my thing and keep, but at the same time, keep the mutual fund thing on hold. This is how the front running takes place. Similarly, when the prices falls down in anticipation of that, I place a sell order, then a sell order for the mutual funds, and then again, I purchase it when the prices go up and when the prices fall down steeply. So that is how front running is. I as a fund manager take advantage of the forthcoming or the UPSI that I have before it becomes public. I take advantage of and I get benefited. That's what the front running concept is. Whereas insider trading is completely, you are trying to prevent an insider from trading while in possession of an UPSI. So
can we say, Renganathan, can we say in the front running,
yes,
mostly it is actually for the personal gains?
Exactly. That's what
people use the information what they have it.
Yes.
But whereas in case of the UPSI, it is the information which is passed on, and it is actually made for the gain for friends, relatives, etc., and other thing in the larger extent.
Exactly.
But whereas the front running restricts only to the personal gain, to the information what he possesses.
Correct. So that's what I said. Like I place a buy order on my behalf in a personal capacity. Second, I take care of the mutual fund. I place a buy order so that so it's personal gains that is at the forefront in case of a front running. So thank you, Bala sir. Yes, that's the thing. So that's a front running, and because this typically happens in case of as a mutual fund space. So that's why I just wanted to talk about this one. Then there is one very interesting factor which is called the swing factor in a typical mutual fund industry. Swinging factor, or because all the mutual funds have to formulate something called a swinging pricing framework. So what happens typically, when for example the DLF sort of a thing which happens, and the fund managers are aware that some of the investors are going to redeem the units much earlier, for whatever reason that they have, the cost or whatever the NAV, that whenever you redeem, even the mutual funds, they have to incur certain cost. Whenever you invest, they incur certain cost. So how do you normally, the costs are apportioned amongst all the unit holders? But typically in a swing pricing formula or a swing pricing factor, where this kind of, when they anticipate, the fund manager basically allocates only to those guys and not to all the things, because the NAV for long-term investors should never get affected. That's the intention with. So there is something called swing pricing formula, pricing framework in a mutual fund, so that whenever the panic button is pressed, the other gullible investors are not suffered due to this act of a few guys. So this is something which is typical of a of a mutual fund. Okay, so these are some of the broad things which are first we need to understand about. Then there is something called switching. So you are in, you as an investor, I as a fund manager, I would have, kept my scripts in a particular, say for example, 80% would be towards the equity, 20 would have been towards debt, but suddenly there is a switch which I'm making, based on, that's a switching. In a normal scenario, I can do that. Or within equity also, I can do that switching. But when I have an UPSI and when I'm doing this kind of a thing, that is also getting the attention of the the regulators, as well as why should a fund manager do this? So these are some of the terminologies that you and I should be aware of it, friends, and that's the reason upfront I had just to describe the. Yes, Bala sir, is it okay?
Perfect. Very good introduction.
Okay, Jambu sir.
All very good. Learning.
Yes, thank you.
That it is excellent introduction about the mutual fund behavior in the capital market. So really appreciate.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Suresh. Thanks a lot. Thanks. Okay, now slowly let's get back into what the regulations, what is there on the anvil, in terms of the PIT regulations that we are talking about. Okay. So as I said initially, to start with, what had typically happened is post the Sodhi committee and other things, SEBI also posed this lot of incidents which I explained. They came out with a circular sometime in 2021 October, laying down who all should be covered in the ambit of insider, but that was only a typical circular only for the mutual funds and not forming part of the insider trading regulations per se. And that's what typically this what they were talking about is you include every employee of the asset management company, or the asset management. See, asset management company is the company which actually runs the mutual fund schemes. Trustee is something which gives the overall direction to the mutual funds, to the AMC. Okay. Now, what typically this talked about is to ensure all the employees so that they don't take undue advantage of the price sensitive information. Now, today, mutual fund, we should also be in a position to understand, friend. Today, when you talk about a particular listed entity space, listed script, whether some due to some corporate action, there will be some impact on the share price or something. But in a mutual fund, only the fund manager will be in a position to understand whenever he is monitoring those scripts, which is on the investee companies. When he has investee companies, he will be the only guy who will be knowing. The first and foremost, the thing that is coming into my mind, and later on you will also be able to understand, especially when we come into the SDD aspect. Now, when I know particular script, there is there is some corporate action or there is an UPSA which belongs to a particular script. How do I, practically there is a challenge as to what all the things that, how do I determine that it is an UPSA? As a fund manager, I might be knowing, but how do I pause it on? How do I put it in the SDD is going to be a major challenge, and who are all the people that is going to be covered. Slowly, let's see how it also spans out, and there will be a lot of hue and cry before typically it takes off, I think, because mutual fund and even the AFs. Now today it is extended to mutual funds, friends. Maybe in the next 6 months down the line, the same sort of things would be extended even to AFs as well. But I think it is to some extent PIT regulations cover those aspects. But next, Disha, please. Okay, this I explained that if the security is amenable to any price discovery on any, I think it should be covered. I think this was one of the good statements that emerged from the Sudhi committee report. Go ahead, Disha, go ahead. Okay. Now, I told you that it is yet to be notified. If you look at chapter 2A, the schedule B1 and chapter 3A and chapter 5 are the most. What is schedule B1 is nothing but the minimum standard codes that we have for other listed entities in schedule A and schedule B for the intermediaries. It's typical of those things. A combo of those, I can say, a combo of both is what is there in schedule B1. So, what is the intention behind this regulations? That any insider of a mutual fund cannot deal in the units of that particular scheme if they are in possession of an UPSI of a script of an investing company of that particular scheme. To put it very simple, this is what I have a scheme. I have got some 10 scripts embedded in it, and in a particular script, there is a price sensitive information that can affect its price. If I know as an insider, I cannot deal in that scheme as an insider. That's all. It's a very as simple as that, because schemes have to be, if you're in a mutual fund, I'll have to AMC. Please, Shruti, yes, let me answer. She is asking, I think, hopefully she stays till the end of the session, because questions are, So to answer you, Shruti, is yes, it is applicable to every or both listed as well as unlisted units as well. Now today, take the analogy, simple analogy, friends. Is it not today normal PIT regulations other than mutual funds? I'm talking about it's applicable to listed securities as well as to those companies whose securities are intent to get listed. So the regulations as of now has not distinguished between what do you call as because even in an unlisted space, if you look at most of the mutual funds would have invested in the debt securities, and if they are in possession of any kind of a default or maybe early redemption by such kind of companies, and those things would have an impact, and that's the reason even the unlisted units would be covered under this, is my view. Okay?
Absolutely right. It is covering the listed and unlisted. Both it covers actually. There is no question. It is only for listed.
Yes.
Absolutely, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. Correct. Okay. So that's the thing. So to answer Shruti, this is the answer. Fine. Next one. So you should understand, see, the impact of a mutual fund vis-a-vis an impact of an equity is equity that's only one particular companies which will be affected. But here the entire NAV is going to get affected because that particular script is forming part of the other. So just because of one, the entire totality in total, the entire NAV of that particular scheme can get affected. And that's the reason you need to prevent that. And as I said, the swing factor mechanism could be applied in case of panic situations. But if a fund manager feels that there will be a material impact due to this, then all the insiders of that AMC would be prohibited from trading in the units of that particular scheme. Go ahead, Disha. We just covered it. Okay. Now, what are the, broadly speaking, what are the ways, what are the different things, how it is applicable? Let's see. First of all, as I said, you have the AMC, you have the mutual funds, you have the AMC, you have the trustee company, right? You have the trustee company. So it is applicable to, one second. It's applicable to primarily to the AMC employees, and of course, trustee you don't have such kind of employees, but it's also applicable to all the trustees as well. It is applicable. Again, a mutual fund will have different schemes handled by different fund managers. So it is applicable only to those schemes wherein the UPSI, where there is a UPSI. So that is the first distinction that you need to make. And does it cover? Yes, it covers all the insiders who are having the what do you call as all the insiders of who has access to UPSI, and there should be something, the UPSI that the fund manager should possess. I think that's another predominant prerequisite for, that's prerequisite. And PIT regulations now, typical of the other PIT regulations, the common PIT regulations applicable for equity. We need to have the internal controls, the systems in place, the code of conduct, all falana, everything should be in place, going forward. So the policies, as she asked, it is applicable
The
for
typical part of it only the maintaining of the structural
is going to be part of that. I think that's a major area, Bala sir, where I think incorporating or putting the things in the SDD is going to be a task.
Correct. That's a great task it is going to be.
Yeah. Okay. Next, Disha. Now, what are the definitions that that this has? What are the definitions? First, securities now includes a mutual fund because, as I said, so the committee and so then connected persons. The circular initially talked about associate persons. So there is there is nothing. The change is basically there is not a change, but the earlier circular talked about it covered all the employees. Today it talks about only a few designated persons and connected persons. So the connected person in this case is whoever is connected to the company in the last 2 months, whereas in an equity it is 6 months. That's one of the difference when you compare between the mutual fund regulations as well as the vis-a-vis the PIT regulations for the equity segment. So that's 2 months versus the 6 months is the thing. And again, any AMC, any trustee company, when it gets floated, it has to have a sponsor. That's why you always see a financial conglomerate floating a mutual fund rather than it is never though it is a standalone entity within the group, you'll never see a mutual fund on its own, without being supported by any group. And that is how sponsors have got certain restrictions on the number of okay. So you have what do you call a sponsor coming and contributing to it. He has to maintain it throughout his equity stake. And also he has got other responsibilities to maintain friends. So that is one thing, sponsorship. So a connected person, anybody, say, to put it very simply, I'm an AMC, I'm a trustee company, am I connected in any manner, whatever, either through an employee or through any other association in the form of an fiduciary relationship that I have, or through an intermediary. For example, if I'm an RTA, I'm connected continuously. RTA is one guy who is connected continuously, and there are different other people who are connected to AMC, like the auditors, statutory auditors, or the valuation agencies. Valuation agencies is another thing which is, those guys are connected to this. So they all have to be, they are all considered to be the connected persons. Yes, go ahead.
So that means the identification of the connected person is itself is a big one, the starting point. Because who are the people who are actually there, that identification.
Yeah, but
because what happens is, it's okay, insider, we know what is it, but whenever we are dealing with outsiders who are not within the organization, like as you said, auditors, advisors and consultants, etc., and other things and all, then that is going to be the most challenging thing where people have to take care, probably executing some NDA agreement, etc., and other thing, and adhering, all those things will come into place. Yeah.
See, even today, even for the equity script, Bala sir, connected persons, of course, every company, listed company also has a list of things. There, the only difference is they have to identify for that particular scheme and find out who are all the connected people. That's the task. What you are talking about is that task I need to have, because valuation agencies can be different from different schemes.
Correct.
Maybe there may be a common auditor, but the other kind of things could be slightly different. So the identification of connected persons.
Yeah, that is a challenge actually. Because identification of the connected person is itself is going to be there, because considering the number of schemes, open-ended, close-ended, different types, all those things is going to be a challenge. Yeah.
Okay. But then there is something called deemed to be connected persons. I think this is more or less a repetition of what we have for the normal equity thing, is also, except the sponsors of the holding company. As I said, only a financial conglomerate will definitely have this kind of a thing. and a banker to the mutual fund, similar banker to the company is what we would have seen, but a banker to the mutual fund, all those people will be called as a deemed to be connected persons. Okay, go ahead, Disha, go ahead. Okay, now again, it talks about information. What is generally available information is all the unit holders are aware, or are they in possession of the same information as a fund manager has? I think that is what Yes, are employees of sponsor company also deemed to be connected person? The answer is no. Answer is no, friends. I'll come to that. I mean, I have some other way to put that across. The straight answer when you ask about the sponsorship is the answer is no, but I have a different thing. I'll answer you, Shruti, in a different manner, on that front. They are not, to put it very simply, they are not except, let me explain with an example so that you will also understand. Let me note down sponsor, employee of sponsor, right? Employee sponsor company as connected person. Okay. Okay, so the generally available information as whether it is equally available to all the unit holders and the what you call the fund manager is what we have to see. If it is there, it is fine. Otherwise, if I possess something, that means it becomes a UPSI. Okay. Now the onus of proving that one is not an insider with respect to is naturally. I mean, it's that whether I have it or not, I need to prove this. And fine, this is go ahead, Disha. Go ahead. So UPSI, again, the only difference between UPSI in case of an equity is, does it materially affect the price of that particular script? Vis-a-vis here, it is talking about the NAV, because always when you talk about the mutual funds, you need to look at the NAV, because today, even if you want to I think great. Thanks a lot, Mr. Suresh. Yes, whenever something comes in the chat box, the faculties things also get. So definitely, Shruti, don't worry. I think we'll answer all your queries to whatever extent possible. Just thanks, Mr. Suresh. As I think we'll. It's a good suggestion that if you can take those things, because ek bar flow khatam karne ke baad, then I'll also be in a position to do it.
No, okay. You can do one thing. What you can do is, reasonably certain questions get accumulated that we can address at that point of time instead of going one by one. That is one. Yeah. And second thing is, even if you look at the question, if it is going to be covered later, then let it be there, parked there only, so that automatically get covers.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. So the difference here is you need to always look at the NAV rather than the price of a particular script, because you can't look at that. So, and that's the difference when you talk about an UPSI for thing. And is it going to really affect the interest of the unit holders? Is you need to look at that aspect also. That's what the UPSI from a mutual fund angle is what we have to look at. What's the next one, please? Go ahead, Apna, Disha. Okay, there are certain other things which will tantamount to an UPSI, because every mutual fund scheme, the accounting policy, again, it's more for AMC, but each scheme also will have certain kind of because depending on the scheme, the scripts that it has invested, even the the accounting policies can differ. But it's not a very, what do you call, a standard one, but whenever there is a change in the accounting policy of a particular scheme. So friends, one thing we should remember is, so long, only when a particular scheme is getting affected, when the UPSI is there, and that's where the insider trading for a mutual fund gets attracted. I think that's a first funda thing that we should remember. Again, a material change in the valuation of any asset, when they mean an asset is when a mutual fund invests, that becomes my investment, and that's why it is an asset for me. And that's why whenever there is a change in the valuation of a particular thing, it becomes a UPSI information. that is one thing. And then if there are putting any restrictions on the redemptions, if there are any restrictions, or Franklin Templeton, which is talked about the winding up of schemes, all of a sudden they wound up some 6 debt fund schemes sometime in February, March 2020. So that will also tantamount to what do you call as an UPSI from a mutual fund angle. We talked about the triggering of swing pricing framework and the applicable. So don't get into that, friends. Swinging formula, swinging price, as I said, is only those guys who are trying to make huge redemptions. The cost allocation will be to those guys only, Visa, and it will not be spread across all the unit holders, so that the NAV of the long term, whoever wants to stay long term, will never be affected. And that's the and depending on the fund manager will put in some sort of a percentage of that. There is a small calculation that needs to be done, friends. And then material change in the liquidity position of the mutual fund schemes. The schemes itself, whenever, again, liquidity position. If I'm a 100% debt-oriented scheme, if I feel that, some of the scripts have not performed well, and, for example, listed, unlisted, somebody was talking about the unlisted space. So, when there is a likelihood of not being the principal and the interest on getting not repaid in due course of time, and due to which, because a mutual fund also, there are two things, friends. One, I take money from the public, from the public, invest in certain scripts. Okay, that's my investment as a mutual fund. But I also do lend to certain companies. For example, the bank, but the NBFCs and the banks. NBFCs are more dependent on mutual funds. So when I'm also lending it to them, what is the amount of the repayment capacity, all those things I need to do a what do you call a risk profile analysis. So if due to that, if the scheme also doesn't have the liquidity position, then that also will form part of your okay. The default in the underlying, which is material to the default in the underlying securities. That's what typically what I'm talking about is a debt security, and there is a likelihood of there is going to be that is going to turn out to be a so-called NP. It's not a NP. NP is only for the loans, not for the So typically it happens. Then systemic transactions. They are also talking about systemic transactions. We all know SIPs, right? As I think most of us would be investing in SIPs. Even that is becoming a part of a UPSI. Suddenly, if the SIPs are stopped, in an aggregate, then that also becomes a thing. Okay. Now, what are the misses from the what have been missed out from the circular dated 21st October? Interestingly, I'm feeling that the investment objective of the concerned MF schemes have been, I don't know whether it's an error or it is something deliberate. I don't know, because investment objective is something which is the crux of any scheme, right? I think maybe it's only a question of time that this will also get introduced. And conversion of closed, yes, because each one a closed-ended scheme, which is a listed schemes vis-a-vis when you go into a what do you call an open-ended scheme, or the vice versa will also get affected. Okay, these swinging, it's covered now. It's covered. Then go ahead, next one now. Okay, designate. We saw the connected person who are connected, but designated persons, again, everybody like any other company where you have the board, you have the compliance officer, you have one functional heads below it, material subsidiaries, all those functional heads flows down to the material subsidiaries. Today, in case of mutual fund, it is the head of the asset management company and etc. The non-executive directors of AMC. Don't forget, independent directors are not typically covered here, friends. It's only the NEDs or NEDs, non-independent, typically of the sponsors. They are all covered under thing. All this, if you look at every functional head is being covered under the unit. What do you call under the gob of designated persons. So when you have the connected person, but designated person is one guy whom I think the entire regulations are completely applicable to these guys. Okay, so it covers everything. It is akin to a normal equity shares listed designated persons. So that is that's that. But only thing we need to the other one I will answer whether the employees or sponsor is not covered, but we will answer it. Let me answer it in a different manner. Now, as I said, code of conduct is required to be formulated for even for the AMC. Now, as we know, when you form a code of conduct, it is nothing but how does one regulate the trades by the employees or the insiders. I think that is what is the code of conduct is broadly, typically, it means how do we regulate, how do we, when an insider wants to trade in the units of a mutual fund or in the scrip of a company in a normal case. And that's how, yeah, sorry. So code of conduct is also necessary. Now, what we need to also to do, friends, is, the connected persons, whenever we are dealing with the connected persons or whenever we are, as a fiduciary, whenever, even in a normal thing, I don't know if people are from listed space today, I don't know whether whenever there is a closure of a trading window, we normally send it to all the insiders. But many a time I feel, and many companies are still or yet to follow this practice of even sending out those trading window closure to the auditors. Simply put it to the auditors. Now, when you talk about auditors, please include everybody. It's not only your statutory auditors, the secretarial auditors, and I'm talking about in general, even the cost auditors in case you are a manufacturing company and subject to cost audit. So please include everybody, send out a notice of trading window. Don't, show the responsibility from that aspect, friends. And similarly, even in case of a mutual fund, whenever there is a connected person which you feel connected to a particular scheme, let us stand. I mean, as and when this gets notified, they have to start sending out. Of course, the fiduciary Schedule C, they have got a duty to maintain the code of conduct. They are supposed to formulate a policy and a code of conduct under Schedule C, and they have to maintain this. It is their responsibility, but don't forget to send the notice, because they have every right to say that we are not aware of this particular UPSI, but never do that. So maybe we can also take an undertaking, friends, even for other listed space also. I'm saying we can take an undertaking from any fiduciary, that a permanent fiduciary that you are dealing with, saying that they have framed a policy and a framework not to trade in the shares of its clients' companies. We can take an undertaking from them also. Of course, designation of a compliance officer is no doubt. The role of compliance officer, the importance that is being given by SEBI on the compliance officer is while it's a good thing, in most of the cases, it's a company secretaries that who are the compliance officers, but SEBI doesn't really say as in LODR, which says that the secretary has to be the compliance officer. PIT regulations doesn't mandate that kind of a thing. You can have anybody as the compliance officer. So depending on the function and depending on the the information that a compliance officer can get, please internally you need to designate a guy who will be typically who has all the who can get all the information. Otherwise, the role of compliance officer, he will get to know only the things at the last moment. So we need to be mindful of that fact also. Yeah, Bala sir, you wanted to say?
Yeah, Renganathan, that is why I said in the beginning, it's challenging for the people to identify the connected person. Rightly, you brought out that point here. Don't forget to send the notice to the cost auditor, other people who are dealing with it. Don't restrict only this sum. Normally, that happens in the organization, because especially when you are working at the different type, different scheme, different thing, different people, we miss out.
We miss out, correct.
So that should not happen.
That's
because if something miss out, something comes, the consequences will be very severe. So the very first place, the identification of the connected person in respect of each of the scheme which is populated is very important actually. Yeah.
Absolutely. And even that's what Bala sir, I was trying to say, because I know most of the companies are not sending these notices, trading window notices to the auditors also. though they are aware, auditors might be aware, but it's better that, from our side also we should.
No, it should
not
be sent. It should be sent. 100%.
And any other advisors, consultants who are involved in a particular corporate action at that point in time when the trading window is closed, please send out the notices to them as well, friends. So that is one point which I just wanted to emphasize. Yes, Disha. Okay. Now, again, this is also talking about the institutional mechanism, for preventing what are the different things, how do you do it, who should be responsible for all these things, So again, I'm saying, if you look at the PIT regulations, the a lot of emphasis have been given. I think the implementation of this entire, not the implementation, the responsibility, the overall responsibility of complying with this entire regulations. Please, friends, please understand it is the board of directors. I think one of the things that we need to bring out very clearly internally as well as through your documentation is that the board is the compliance officer is only a guy who implements those things because you can't expect the board to implement it. It's like a delegated powers to the compliance officer for implementing it. While implementing, he or she has to take care of certain other factors. That is why you and I are being designated as. So we need to be cautious of what are we, so that is one thing. Secondly, even the audit committee, there is a responsibility on the audit committee, friends. So tomorrow, when even in a normal company, equity listed company, also when you talk about the terms of reference of the audit committee, please include an item on the a review of what do you call the terms of reference of the audit committee should contain a review of the what do you call the internal policies pertaining to the PIT regulations. I think that is one thing which I would request everybody to go and relook at the terms of references of the audit committee, specifically the audit committee. Okay, because if you look at Schedule B to the normal one, and it also talks about placing of certain the insider trading reports before the chairperson of the audit committee. The only one thing which Balasar, Malik, Jambu sir, I would just would need your thing for a minute, so that let me take a small breather. Saying that how do you when you talk about the role of a compliance officer, when you talk about the role of a compliance officer, he comes at the all the corporate actions that are really required. He comes at he comes to know only at the last moment. Okay, because many waters would have flown across the sea by that time. But he comes to know what at the last, and he is made responsible for the compliance of all these things. How do you view this? Is one. Second thing is it also talks about the compliance officer to be reportable to the board or to the audit committee. Is it practically possible? Over to you, to both of you, or Suresh also can, somebody also can pitch in for a minute. If you can give me a breather, I'll also listen to your views, please.
Just my sharing here is when, so either the chairman and the CEO of MD, we have to be very clear. Anything that you have that has got an impact, whether it is going to be really happen or not, that they should keep us in confidence. And it is not necessary what a chairman has told you, we have to share it with MD, or it sometimes happen that it is just when the MD is a professional MD, not an owner driven this thing. But what I mean to say is that the understanding and the wavelength between the tripartite is very important if we have to sustain the real compliance, which is not so easy at times, because when you come out of, something happen in a formalized meeting and certain things happen not out of intent, but out of this thing in an informal way. So it's good to keep the rules of the games with the big bosses, because if you worry for them not to share them transparently, finally your neck will be under so it is good to clear the so like in my this thing, my chairman used to come from Switzerland, but he will first talk to me, those days when this thing was there, what exactly is the situation. So I think the clarity is there, the things with, I think we will put them in place, this is my personal feeling.
Renganathan, to be very frank with you, it is, the trust and the confidentiality element with the chairman has on the company secretary. As Jambunathan puts it very clearly, we had a lot of occasions where, even the managing director of the company was to be actually changed. Chairman called me, this is what it is going to happen, this is what the thing, this is what the things. He has told me. I know the current MD is going to be replaced. But the problem is, the current MD is calling me, you went and met the chairman, you had a lunch with him, you had some discussion. What is that you tell me? I am actually duty bound. When the chairman has decided to share certain privileged information to me for my information, I am actually bound to keep that confidentiality. That sort of the setup is working in many places. That should work in all the places. Because somehow that I have a privilege. I've associated with one company almost about 30 years. I served in that company about 30 years. And I was very happy because I had a privilege of working about 7 expatriate people with them. And all these things I have actually come across, very embarrassment situations, not sharing the knowledge, putting the things. Sir, I'm sorry. Better don't ask me anything. Don't put me in the embarrassing condition. I used to say like that. So that should be the case, because it is not that everything happens on the last minute, we all them for no. Because compliance officers should be aware, as Jambunathan puts it, whether it is going to be a reality or otherwise, also so that his preparedness in terms of the compliance requirement is actually put in place. That is my view.
Very good, very good. So only one thing, sir, where, the PIT regulations in general also talks about reporting to the board, reporting to the, practically it doesn't happen. Practically, but can you just imagine, except the managing director or the CEO reporting to the board, practically does it happen that, even a CFO, I'm saying, CFO or SES or any other guy, reporting to the board is something which, I don't know.
Really, practically, it is not the reporting to the board. Means, see, board consists of all the directors together. Okay, because all collectively, the directors consist of the board. But normally what happens, reporting generally happens directly to the chairman or the audit committee chairman. And of course, to the greater extent to the managing director involving the day-to-day things, etc. and other things. That is what is normally happens. Only when the board procedure take place, the board meeting take place, etc. Everything is actually discussed at that particular meeting. Exactly. Otherwise,
I just want to add, as long as the performance appraisal of a compliance officer and the compensation is truly decided by the board or the chairman, then it is okay. When you have to be under the pressure of the managing director, so we also as human being maybe at times will come out of this. So this threadbare walking is going to be the most difficult.
Yeah, that is there. That is there. I agree with you.
So what happens, why they raise this is issue, Jambuzar, is basically, when these guys come for inspection. I'm not only talking about SEBI, but RBI and other thing. They ask for reporting authority. If, the compliance officer kisko report kar raha hai, and then that comes out as an audit point, without understanding the nuances of how this is possible or not. So I just wanted to know your views also, so India that's not a thing, right? Jambuzar, as you rightly said, so long as my appraisal is in your hands, I'll have to. So very nicely put it. But okay, going back, we'll go back. Disha, just please. Okay. Now, first is what are the things institution mechanism as? In fact, one of the things I'll add to this, as Bala sir has been reiterating right from beginning, that identification of connected persons. I'll add it. Identification of designated person, what is UPSI, and UPSI, friends, I think one of the things which I think even in a normal, other than this mutual fund regulations, I'm talking about I don't know how many of you have gone through the latest discussion paper that SEBI has come out on last Thursday. What do you call, last Thursday, seeking, comments, public comments, on initially, if you remember, under the UPSA definition, the material events as per regulation 30 of the listing regulations was deleted. Now there is a proposal, this discussion paper completely talks about bringing back those into the UPSA category. That's one thing, please go through this, and that is going to have a huge impact in the listed space. So that's one thing. Secondly, confidentiality of UPSA. How are you going to prevent this confidentiality? UPSA is another factor that each of the mutual fund has to take care of it. Of course, this is applicable for other things or other normal companies as well. And secondly, restrictions on communication. If you look at Schedule A, of the bid regulations, it also talks about appointing a chief communication officer, right? To a chief relationship officer, or what do you call it? So mutual fund, at least the regulation doesn't talk about that, but how do you communicate within and outside is one of the things that the policy has to take care of it. And Bala sir, again, your point has come, list of employees and other recipients of UPSI. This is where the connected persons and execution of the confidentiality agreements or the NDAs with all these things come up, and the periodic review. Now, periodic review and evaluation process, again, the task has been entrusted to the audit committee. Please, friends, include as a terms of reference, include this aspect if you are, and it also talks about having a whistleblower policy. Whistleblower policy is a mandatory thing now, so in almost all the cases, all the incidents that you come to hear about is only through the whistleblowing mechanism, and hence this is also mandating to have a whistleblower policy. Okay, good. Disha, go ahead.
See, even if the regulation talks about it, you need to have the necessary internal control in place, and you need to give an annual affirmation to the audit committee about this. That is also there. In view of that, you may have a policy, you have the internal control mechanism, you have the whistleblower mechanism, but the regular monitoring is a must, and wherever required, as you rightly say, a modification, changes according to the need is actually the order of the day which need to be done. Because just to be a formulated the policy, it is not enough. Monitoring the policy, seeing the repercussions, and wherever required, bringing the modification, that is actually required. Because wherever I work in the organization, we also used to make a policy. Those days I'm talking about maybe 28 years back. We always used to put. So what we used to put, we used to give the version number, version 1, version 2, version 3, version 4, like that, and the short form when it is modified also, so that people know whether it is the latest or that is the older one when they open it.
Yeah, Disha, go ahead. Next one. Okay. Now, again, continuing with it, the code of conduct or putting some internal control or the putting the institutional mechanism in place. Again, it talks about the board of AMC has to ensure. So let us, I think in AMC normally, typically in mutual fund, it is not that 4 board meetings; it's more than 6 board meetings happen in a year. So I would request that whoever is from the mutual fund space, to place this in front of to place it before the board every time, so that the board is aware, and the compliance officer is also taking adequate precaution that that the board is aware of all the things that are happening. Audit committee, again, internal controls and other things. Audit committee is it's a responsibility of the audit committee to monitor this and review at least once in a year. So there needs to be some sort of an education to the audit committee members about I think mutual fund industry, if you see friends, mutual fund, the trustee companies and they're all highly experienced people in the financial space. I think these are all very though it is said it's very easy to implement as far as this slide is the second and the third part is concerned. But Another thing is, please, we need to also to conduct inquiry. There is a process for, even otherwise, even for other listed space, we have this procedure for, conducting inquiry and taking some disciplinary action in case of suspected leakage and other things. You all remember why this amendment to the PIT regulations came in terms of preventing this UPSA, thanks to all those WhatsApp messages which were pausing on, and that's the reason this has also been made part of the institutional mechanism or as a part of the internal control. So, and if at all there is any kind of such a thing, please we need to inform SEBI immediately is what is being stated. Go ahead, Nandisha. This is where we were. So institutional mechanism is one thing, and secondly, communication. Who should communicate, and what are the things that are required to be communicated? It is very easy to say rather than really getting it implemented. But while we are still struggling in the equity space, a mutual fund will have additional thing. I need to monitor as a fund manager each one script. Which is going to constitute from which the UPS is going to emanate. I need to have a track on those things and typically So let me also take this one small Bala sir at this stage to explain certain things about because otherwise I'll be missing something. So I don't know whether. Okay. Now typically what happens is. There is something very peculiar to the insurance companies and mutual fund companies, which is called the stewardship code, where it talks about, I as a fund manager, I would have invested the public money in different scripts, in different schemes. What is the mechanism that with which I, as an investor, as a fund manager, both in the or investment manager in the insurance company, have what are the precautions and what is the review mechanism of the investments that I have made, and to what extent I am in dialogue with the investee company, and to what extent whenever the investee companies comes for voting to me in the form of a shareholder, what is that that says that I should vote for or against, typically in a mutual fund, if you don't vote, if you abstain from voting, SEBI or in case of insurance companies, IRDA takes it slightly differently in the sense if you abstain from voting. So either you say that, you vote for it. So this is the stewardship code under the mutual fund and it also allows, why I'm saying this is a very practical thing which is going to happen, and some of the points which I just wanted to touch upon, here is, typically when the stewardship code is allowing you to do all this kind of a thing. So I am in dialogue with the company. I am in dialogue with the listed company. So I would have already started getting some sort of a UPSI indirectly. So that is where I think the first trigger point, Bala sir, when you said about this, the confidentiality or, I need to do on my own. I need to execute an NDA with my, the audit committee, or internally I need to execute because I'm allowed to go and talk to the investee companies to find out, because what typically happens is this kind of a thing happens once in a quarter or once in 6 months. I go and talk to the investee companies. If I come to know certain things, I think it is better that that particular script is put under the radar, and I as a fund manager, me and my entire team, should be blocked from trading in the particular script, as well as in the if you look at that circular of SEBI of October 21, it talks about you need to inform about the insiders in a mutual fund whenever they are dealing with any kind of a script. They have to disclose their holdings.
Complete transparency is required actually, because the code actually requires whenever you are dealing with the institutional investors,
yes,
complete transparent with the investee company is actually called for. That is one of the essential requirement of the stewardship code, what you said.
Exactly. So, one of the ways, Balasar, why I'm emphasizing this point is, now today the fund managers would have gone and met, they would have done it, but how do you document it? And how does the board also come to know about this? Through the risk management committee or the, you can just start instead of elaborating everything, but I think a word of a small note that this has been made can do wonders. That's how the improvisation can happen from our side too, just to bring it so that the board and the AMC is also always playing the role that, that they are the guys who are ultimately responsible for this. So one way of putting a small note whenever there is a meeting that takes place is one thing. Secondly, the voting pattern, whenever they are doing for listed companies, it has to be disclosed to SEBI and IRDA in case of insurance companies. So that is also another voting pattern, but that's not a typically UPSA, because it's a post event of you are just voting it in the what do you call, in the general meeting. So that's another thing. So stewardship board. But when you talk about 2-3 factors where Shruti was talking about the sponsor employees and other thing, I will touch upon in a different manner here. So I am a financial conglomerate. I am a holding company. One of my subsidiaries, my mutual fund AMC. Now assuming that your holding company is an investment banker, is a merchant banker. Okay. Now, what does ICDR say? ICDR talks about in 2 places. It talks about one in case of an IPO and another thing in case of a QIP, qualified institutional placement. It talks about 2 scenarios where mutual funds play a predominant role. If you talk about IPO, it talks about the participation by the mutual funds, and at least 30% among the QIBs, 30% should be allocated to the what do you call, the insurance, to the mutual funds. And mutual funds also play a major role as an anchor investor to an IPO. Now the question that comes, Balasar, is today, unlike when a typical in an IPO, see, these are all the problems that are going to come up. As an IPO, as a merchant banker, I'm the holding company, but I also have an AMC, which is my subsidiary company. So in a normal road shows, the companies, the issuer company goes to the financial institutional guys, the PE guys and all those stuff, the FIIs of the world. They go and have a conversation and come back. But there is also nowadays that mutual funds are also getting covered under this, because once the mutual funds, once an issuer is talking to this by way of a roadshow, my request is the mutual fund should immediately get into should put that script, that particular script, because that's going to be intent to get listed. So it is better, if you're going to cover that, you better put that as a part of your restricted list, is what my one thing which I'm talking about. So to answer, Shruti, now the sponsor employee, how do they come into picture? So if I'm a merchant banker who is handling a particular issue, my mutual fund subsidiary is allowed to invest in that IPO. It's permitted. It's permitted, because one of the things SEBI asks is, to what extent was your mutual fund itself is going to subscribe? So yes, I'm ready to, I have to invest in this. So at that point in time, the employees of the merchant banker, which is the holding company or associate, whatever you call it. So, those guys who are transaction team, what I call the transaction team, should be debarred from, dealing in that particular scheme. And that's the only way the employees of the sponsor. Otherwise, in general, they need not be covered. Yes, if there is a common director, if the chairman is common, or if there is a common director, maybe those guys should be covered permanently, or whenever this UPSA comes. That's a way you can cover the sponsor of this. So typically, this is one thing. At least in an IPO, you have a document which is being uploaded on the website of the regulator and the exchanges. So you got time to go through it. But in a QIP happens in within no time. QIP happens within no time. So when this kind of a dialogue takes place during the before the QIP, And that's the time also where the mutual funds have to very clearly put in some sort of restrictions on the insiders the day that they feel that they are going to be part of this QIP show also. I think that's two things which are emerging, which I just wanted to. Now, the question of getting into a confidentiality agreement or from, what do you call, today, Bala sir, no, there is no confidentiality agreement that is entered between the issuer company in an IPO vis-a-vis the road shows that are being conducted to the FIs and other people. There is nothing on paper. There is nothing on paper, right? Maybe, when I show as a merchant banker or an issuer, I give some disclaimers, this is confidential, etc., etc. But going forward, when mutual funds are typically covered, I think they have to doubly cautious of this fact in an IPO and a QIP. This is one scenario which I just really wanted to point out on this friends. This is because mutual fund play a very great role in IPOs and QIPs, and that's why I just wanted to touch upon that factor. Okay.
Not only that, I think I also seem to read in the regulation. I think one of the regulation in 5, I think so. The AMC with the approval of the trustee, they also need to have a written policy in cases if the leak of UPSI takes place. What is the methodology, how the inquiry is going to be conducted, etc., and other things and all. Even that is one of the things which is actually mentioned in the regulation 5. I think.
So just covered in the previous slide, sir, the leaks.
Yeah.
That's what I told. All these things, even for other equity listed also, thanks to WhatsApp cases.
No, that is right. You covered it actually, but the regulation itself says that you need to have the written policy mentioning the things. That is what I seem to have read it.
Yeah, okay. So again, it also talks about a policy. When you talk about a policy, it also talks about determination for legitimate purposes.
Correct.
So, all those things, normally what typically happens is, policies, I don't know to what extent policies are given importance from a regulatory perspective, but, most of the policies are cut paste, copy paste, all those things happen. I mean, I'm talking not in general, but yes, I think that is where we need to be careful about drafting this policy with some good English. Maybe we all can take Bala sir's help in drafting with good English. Anyway, so that's one thing. So notice of confidentiality. It also says, the second bullet point, if you see, the recipient needs to be explained about, about the obligations therefrom, which is, that's what, whenever we send out the notices, whenever we send out that, the cautionary thing for the connected persons, let us put, saying that this is what you are obligated, okay. Yeah, the most,
Yeah, this is it.
This is it. Yes. Even, even for a normal equity listed, companies, we are struggling to, somebody might say it's very easy, but yes, if we really follow, over a period of time, it's going to be easy. But today, the identification of UPSI is becoming rather. One is identification of UPSI, though we identify the timing. The timing is most important. For example, if I'm a listed entity, I do not know if I'm doing an M&A, what stage I should start putting it in the, should I start at the time of when I start an informal discussion with the target company, or is it the time when I'm draw up my term sheet that I need to put it? This itself is being discussed. According to me, the moment you sign whether a binding or a non-binding term sheet for an M&A, that's the time we should put it in the SDD. Now, assuming a mutual fund also comes to know about this kind of a thing at the time, this is an UPF. Comes to know that these guys have signed a the listed entity has signed a term sheet, binding or non-binding. If the mutual fund is aware of this, fund manager should very clearly get de-alienated from this, and you should be very careful in dealing with this kind of a thing, especially the front running is what the fund manager should not should not do. That is one thing which, so he should start putting it in the, so the question, Bala sir, I'm asking is today, I'm a mutual fund manager. I'm aware of certain UPSI. I'm aware of certain UPS of a particular script. But what do I put in my SDD as a fund manager? Whether I need to put that one particular script so that this particular, because here I cannot distinguish between the scripts. I have to talk about the scheme as a whole. So should I put everything that I'm aware of this particular thing, hence that scheme is covered under the SDD, or something is one deliberation that is going to happen in the mutual fund industry as to which one should I really put, because the scheme, it is ultimately talking about the scheme. As always, SDD, you have an audit trail, stamping, see, this is where ensuring controls on manner of determination of UPSA. I know about a particular scheme which forms a part of my about my 10 portfolio of investments in a particular scheme. So should I include the scheme as a part of the SDD, or what is it? Should I not trade further in that particular scripts? Is what one has to evolve over a period of time. So of course other things are as always for even which is applicable for other things. Now differences, of course, this I'm not able to understand as far as what do you call the mutual fund is concerned. I understand under regulation 4 in figures of an equity, where if I do something off market transactions or other things, I have got enough of but same thing is getting extended to the mutual fund. I don't know whether today when I have some mutual funds, can I just sell it to Bala sir? The answer is no, I cannot sell it. Nor he can purchase. But I don't know. Is there only friends from typical who is in the operational part of mutual fund industries can say whether I can do an off-market transaction of the units, because the entire regulation is focusing on the scheme and the units. If I'm talking only about the particular script, then it's a different ballgame altogether. So this is something which is going to be debated when this becomes a, what do you call, a law, when it becomes a law, And only thing is transactions that are triggered through the systemic important. I had this doubt in my mind. I think there is a clarity, whenever I do an SIP, when do I do? Today I'm doing an SIP. I don't have any UPSI, but tomorrow some UPSI comes. Can I continue with the SIP? It talks about, yes, it's only at the time when you begin. Do you have an UPSI? Then don't trade. Don't trade. But at the same time, if you're already started and UPSI comes at the later stage, there is no need to stop the SIP. I think there is a good amount of clarity. Yesterday I was grappling with this question, but I think there is a good clarity on this aspect.
Shruti is asking a question.
Yeah.
Shruti is asking a question. Should AMC start maintaining SDD even prior to the launch of the scheme?
Oh, but this also I had. One second. Launch of the scheme. I would say there are two ways of looking at it. Before launch of the scheme, again, it is like a intent to get listed.
Intent to get listed. That's what you said in the beginning.
Intent to get listed, Shruti, to be very frank. So if you feel that this scheme is going to be a close-ended scheme, and because you are launching it with something in mind saying that this scheme is going to perform nicely in the next 3 to 6 months, because you have some sort of not the external factors, but some sort of internal views emerging, because you also would have, the fund manager would have taken a conscious call before devising a particular scheme. So in that case, to be on a very conservative case, you can, but I would feel that the moment you file the draft, see, there are two ways again. The moment you file a scheme, draft scheme with the SEBI, that's the time where you can, if only for, that's one thing where you can insert, but other thing is at the time of launch also you can bring it. If it is only open-ended schemes, I don't think a lot of importance need to be given for such kind of a thing. But again, debt versus equity, please understand debt versus equity. At least in a debt scheme, you have the credit rating things in place. And but in case of an equity, you don't have. So more towards, or I would feel more towards the closed-ended and less towards open-ended. Yes, it is like a intent to get listed. So you need to just to find out the time space within which SDD has to be maintained. There is no clarity. Clarity should come, but this is how you need to distinguish, friends. Okay. Now trading plan. Now trading plan, we all know, friends, even in equity and other thing, only I think handful of companies would have given the trading plan for an equity shares. I do not know how this is applicable to how this could be implemented rather for a mutual fund. Now tell me, a trading plan is to be given by an insider or a promoter is what typically it says. So, and one second. So under the mutual fund, it has to be intimated 60 days, all those things are fine. But conceptually, even in case of an equity, if I give a trading plan, I have to stick to it. I have to adhere to it. I cannot change it. Whatever, I have promised under this, I have to do it. No, I can't change it for a year, But in case of a mutual fund, I don't understand how this is going to be really getting, is going to get implemented. Because here you are talking about a scheme. So are you talking about a trading plan for a particular scheme? And so are you able to envisage 12 months ahead of things saying that, or maybe 60 days, it talks about before the trade, it talks about 2 months prior to that. So when I'm talking about 2 months, but at the same time, I have to comply with the trading plan for the next 1 year. So I don't think a trading plan can work in a mutual fund is at this juncture is what I'm feeling, unless I do some
We will
more.
definitely have a practical problem on this in implementing it. It is not going to be that easy like what we talk about the equity. It is going to be differently, very difficult. But as you rightly say, as we start implementing on we will experience the difficulty.
Exactly. So because even as a sponsor, for example, if I'm the holding company, I know that mutual fund is going to have the scheme getting floated. I know I will not stand invested in this particular scheme for a period of a year. So I think this is, I don't know why this trading plan has come into it unless there is some detailed analysis of this. Okay. Next is basically again on the what are the disclosures that are required to be made. Now, again, nothing has been mentioned now. This is what they are trying to do it, and reporting of insiders beyond, when you go beyond a threshold, how should be informed. Today there is nothing that a mutual fund informs the stock exchanges, but going forward with all these things in place, whether how do we, the time limit will be set by SEBI as to how do it. It's more of a disclosure requirement that is going to haul up, because the concept of a mutual fund, as I said, is something which it's a combo of different investments together and everybody should be benefited. But if the AMC, the fund managers, are asked to report on all these things quite frequently, I think this is going to be a task for them as well. Code of conduct, we saw what is code of conduct for each and for the designated persons, and how do you handle the UPSI. Again, the biggest problem that a mutual fund is going to face is, how do I handle an UPSI for a particular scheme? That is what they'll have to think. So now today the question will be, whenever a fund manager is going to formulate a scheme, he will be, he will take all kinds of precautions as to which one to include and which one not to include in this particular scheme, especially if he's burdened with both the equity and debt together. Then this becomes a rather additional issue. So of course, there is an annual affirmation before the audit committee that yes, I have complied with everything. That's what I'm saying, friends. Whenever there is some disclosures that are happening under this, please place it before the audit committee, so that you do your duty, but at the same time the committee is fully aware of it. So there is a framing of policy. Bala sir, what you were talking about for the UPSI leakage.
Yeah, that is
right. That's also a lot of things. It also as a mutual fund always plays these kind of policies in front of the a trustee company also once in a while, so that the trustee company is also aware of each and everything that is happening in the AMC front. Okay, contra trade, which even in today's normal equity, there is a lot of there is a separate FAQs on corporate on contra trade also. But I don't understand in case of a mutual fund, though by an example one can demonstrate that one can if I'm particular unit, if I'm purchasing in a particular unit, don't sell it within 6 months, but I can sell the other schemes. Typically that is how we need to go and find out, but it's only restricted to a period of 2 months. I don't know how, equity linking it to what do you call as the mutual fund is going to help, but there is something called the minimum standards. That's what COC requires you to have the minimum. This is what we discussed at the front, compliance officer reporting to the board. Very easy to put as a document, as we all would have read that the company secretaries are the conscious keepers of whatever that is applicable only in study materials and not in reality, right? So, of course, whatever reports the statute mandates, I think instead of 1 year, I think we should keep placing it quite frequently so that they are fully aware of this. Now there is something called Chinese walls. In any kind of company, there is especially when you are attached to a financial services company, you have to have a clear-cut demarcation between the guys who are handling the UPSI and the ordinary folks. And that is where the Chinese wall concept comes in. Yes, when you can share the information on a need-to-know basis and for legitimate purposes, there always you can bring the guy from a common platform to the to the UPSI space, but it should be governed by the confidentiality thing. So even in case of mutual funds, it's there for even for equity, but typically it's Chinese wall is more applicable from an intermediary and a fiduciary point of view rather than the equity listed company. But the same thing, though mutual fund again is not an intermediary, but itself is a entity which performs the investment activity on behalf of lakhs and crores of investors, and that is why you should have a Chinese wall procedures for this, and so it is applicable for all designated persons and their relative. Now, when we talk about trading window closure for a normal equity, here it is talking about, it just uses a different word called closure period, in relation to schemes and, the only thing, what typically this regulation is talking about is there is no need to have a pre-deal approval, unless it crosses a particular threshold is what this regulation typically. So this is closure period is nothing but your closure of trading window. Now in an equity, you have very specific, if not for all the corporate actions, but every quarter you close the trading window for the financial results. But in case of maybe in case of the only thing which I can think of, couple of things is in case a scheme declares dividend, in case it declares dividend, because that can come as a part of your SDD, that can come as a part of your closure period internally, that could come. And secondly, even redemption of or closure of schemes can part of your closure period thing. Violation of COC, disciplinary action in form the stock exchange. Now that's the reason, when you're talking about insiders, also include your immediate relatives. With all those things are applicable, PAN card, and if you have any material relationship more than 25%, etc., everything is applicable. Please give all those details as a part of your disclosure to the to the compliance officer. Okay, so Bala sir, this is what broadly I have to I can share. I was thinking of sharing broadly on this aspects, because I would reiterate that it is yet to come, but there are a lot of other things which are as a mutual fund guy, a lot of especially on the regulatory front, because the fund managers will come and dictate terms, right? We need to be very careful about what are we going to formulate in the policies, how do we get it approved, how do we educate even the audit committee and the board to some extent about this regulations is what we have to think forward, So broadly, this is what, to give you a broad flavor about these regulations and how do we take about is what I thought of sharing today, friends. And Mala sir, over to you. Anybody else, anything, if you have, happy to.
Renganathan, I must have actually appreciate and acknowledge the great experience with which you actually applied the mutual funds today in a very, very lucid manner. Where there are many things we don't have the answer today, as
Yes.
we go along, when the things are implemented, the things will be there. Especially if we talk about the contra transactions, if we are talking about the restricted list, and again the methodology of the pre-clearance, whether are you going to have a particular format for the re-clearance, or how it is going to be there, and the disclosure from the DP, all those things as we go along, then only we will see that. There are many intricacies you actually touch upon relating to mutual funds, how it is actually essential or not essential, what is the purpose, etc. And all. As we do not know, we do not have the answer today actually.
Correct.
Because the regulation is just to come, it is waiting for the implementation. The moment implementation takes place, then we'll have many more answers. Maybe we can expect more clarification, more guidelines, more notification, which also will come. That is what I would actually presume according to me. And second thing is, I think Jampunathan has actually put up one question initially only, which he actually said either you can answer or at the end of the session. I think something you discuss also, but I will read out for you what he actually has put out here. He says, considering the proposed long list of connected persons, it might be a very challenging to prove who was in possession of inside information at the same time has carried out the transaction to evade, circumvent the prohibitions of the PIT regulations. Moreover, challenging for the connected person to prove their innocence as they are connected to the AMC or mutual fund in one way or other.
He has actually given a factual statement. No question. This is a factual reality is what Mr. Malik has.
I know.
Because ultimately, you can keep on talking about two things, Bala sir. Throughout your life, you can talk about one is governance, one is this insider trading regulations. Because all these, both the things are nothing but ethics. Preaching is very easy, implementation is very difficult. But yes, thanks, Jambu sir, for highlighting this. Again, I think somebody else has posted something at the last.
I believe all the regulation guidelines are perfectly capable to put forth the compliance. However, to abide by the letter and spirit is important.
Yes, of course.
No, that is true. See, many times I also talk. We may be legally correct, but we will not ask a question, are we morally correct? Because the question is, if I borrow some money from a friend of mine, he doesn't bother for about 3 years, I also don't pay the money, and the 4th year he comes and asks. Legally, I am not bound to pay. Because under the Limitation Act, if he has not taken any action to recover the money in the 3 years period, it is hit by the Limitation Act. So I don't have to pay perfectly. I am all right legally. But morally, am I correct? He is being a good friend with me, who actually helped me in time. And okay, and he comes now. Can I actually take this plea and say, am I doing it morally correct? I always used to question this myself. Because there is something called legally we may be right, morally we may not be correct. Here again, when you are talking about the letter and the spirit, we have to actually see what is the intention of the regulations. Because we have to see the end, what is the expected end is actually met with rather than, ticking of the things. That should be the spirit. I agree with this.
Exactly. Okay, Suresh has raised a very, very good question. I'm not talking about, but a very critical or a very interesting thing that Suresh has raised this is, what about media channel where experts or or mutual fund connected people are sharing their opinion about the mutual fund basis UPSI. Shouldn't be included media channel in this chapter like deemed connected persons. As mutual fund influence capital market significantly, they're buying and offloading your views. Okay. Okay. I think it's a very great point, but tell me, Suresh, what happens is the moment you talk about the media guys, they talk about all kinds of rights that they have in the universe, and that's
I
a,
can
I mean, it's,
I can
Hello?
understand, sir, because of then there will be a very big way hue and cry, because of then the democratic environment, many things will come. But
But they
mutual
should be.
fund is playing a very vital role in capital market today. After
Yes.
having all the capital market crisis in 1995, 2000,
Yeah.
2022, 2023, short selling and all those things. So here actually there should be some governance point, or how they have a information which is UPSI like that, and
Exactly.
they just have a deliberation about those things, and small investors having a little bit knowledge about the mutual fund, and they burn their fingers. Ultimately, in all the scenarios, every time small investors, they lost money.
Of course, mutual fund is meant for them, and I think
Only for
more,
them.
correct, lot
I
more protection. Maybe one of the things that can happen in a normal equity where the research guy gives a buy and sell recommendation on all those things. These guys have to be told when they go to media not to give only a general statement rather than talking about any specifics. That could be the only way. Yes, it's a very valid point about including the media, Suresh. No doubt, we should cover them. Is what
unfortunately today that is not there.
That's what.
Yeah.
I know. Or maybe I don't know whether it's really going to, as he says, hue and cry hoga, as if, their entire rights, personal, whatever professional rights have been taken away is what is going to happen. But yes, that at least from mutual fund, there is a point which you are making, Suresh, is because it's basically meant for the entire retail guys, the normal guys who are, some people who subscribe even 500 rupees every month towards the SIP. It's basically to help them to protect their interest. Yes, we should do. Maybe as professionals, dire karenge. Let's see how the statute also.
But I really appreciate this is we welcome to this kind of initiatives by the CS.B after having all those things, ILF and whatever you have given in the introductory part, some examples of some of the incident which has happened in financial market. So really it is very good initiative. We look forward for that about the strict implementation. That's the only.
Yes, I think implementation.
Yeah, that is true. That is true very clearly, because you see mutual fund market, if we actually see over the period of time, it is grown, 5 times than what it was actually compared to in the year 2000, early 2000, probably. Now it is growth. See the number of schemes, number of closed-end schemes, number of open-end schemes and other things and all. See the number of investors, etc. Because people are much concerned about their hard-earned money. They don't want to take, unnecessary risk and lose the money, as you rightly said here. Because mutual fund seems to be today is the very safer investment for the common people who are actually putting their hard-earned money, definitely. Exactly. So in that sense, it's a very good initiative which is taken by the CS.B. But only thing is, yes, as the implementation takes place only, we will know what is the hiccups, what are the things which are required, which will actually come up, and maybe some sort of the clarification, corrective, notification, etc. might actually come. That is what I feel.
Sir, is there any provision about the considering as a deemed a criminal offense or all those things? Since you are representative to many committees and all those things, and during the discussion, this point has come up whether while finalizing some concept note or something.
I didn't get you, Mr. Suresh. Can you just repeat?
One is the financial imposing the penalty for this kind of under this new amendment, chapter 2. But is there any provision just for academic point? I'm trying to understand from you, expert, any penalty like financial penalty as well as the criminal offense, and then there is an imprisonment and all those things. Just to
exactly.
serious.
I think
violation.
criminal is not being so discussed in detail, but yes, financial liability, of course it is there. And somebody has also posed that front running as it should be prevented upfront to instill. So that's the precise reason, friends. If you had listened to me first, the front running things have to be stopped upfront, and that is why these regulations are being made compulsorily getting implemented for the mutual fund regulations also.
In fact, there have been irregularities in the front running in the past.
That's the thing. Why front running? Not only in mutual fund, even in IPOs, it has happened in many cases. But all the more mutual fund has to be given a lot of weightage because it's more for the retail investors, and that's how. Mr. Suresh, where are you from? Hello.
I'm from the corporate only.
Okay. Take it. So nice to see you. Nice to see you, and good to participate. And I think a lot of good questions had come. But
I will also request to Bala sir that when this is the one particularly about new amendment, but about the general environment, about the mutual fund and all those things. If we have any second this kind of session, I think it is a greatly benefited to our professionals also, as well as to we also can educate to our many other people who are in the market or our associates and friends, colleagues, to ensure and safeguard their hard money particularly. So I request to Bala sir.
Hey, that is true. I agree with you actually. Because
Really?
the thing is, you see, ultimately all the regulations, they want to bring the greater compliance, greater transparency. They are all working in the best interest of the investors, that too also small investors. Okay, if you look at the SEBI preamble, it always done. Safeguarding of the investors, that too also small investors. That is the whole idea. But there are a lot of things which are actually happening, unfortunately, which need to be arrested. That is why people are all coming with the regulations. As a professional, we have to play our role. We have to ensure what maximum we can actually do, what maximum we can actually contribute. We have to continue to educate our own board, our own management, the people who are connected with them, bringing out to the development which are taking as a regulation, what required to be done, what are the amendments required within the organization. Those things we need to actually take it up to oppose the profession. That is definitely the case.
Very true.
I think there is no other questions actually there in the.
There is something Bala sir ke liye kuch hai.
Yeah. Always pleasure to you speaking on the various topics, understanding and take a comment.
But I don't know whether it is to Bala sir or to me. Always pleasure to see you speaking on various topics. I don't know whether to.
It will be you, I think, because you today
I think,
you are the man of the match. So he is actually giving you really the very encouraging section. Both of you, he says.
So she has I know very beautiful diplomatically to both of you. Very good. Chalo. So anyway, thanks.
It is always pleasure to listen Renganathan. I actually respect, and as I have been telling in the past also, I always feel, 25 years younger when I meet the younger generation, especially, and at the same time, I feel enriched on the ongoing learning, because learning is no end. Till the day we reach the grave, we will continue to learn.
The law of Bala sir, the law of diminishing returns is not applicable only for knowledge.
Anyway, with the grace of the God, I must say actually, at this particular age, I am able to keep in touch with the profession, able to keep in touch with the development which are happening. I am greatly thankful to that, because 75 years is not a small age for the people. Because I see many people are even younger than me. They somehow other think, they are almost done with or something like that. That sort of the thing which is there. So to that extent, I am very grateful to God, especially people like Jambunathan, Suresh, and all these people who are there. Their valuable sharing of the practical experience really keep me, more enthusiastic, keeping my force of learning more and more what is happening actually around. That is true. Learning is the continuous process we need to be. Anyway, I'll take a formal thanks to Mr. Renganathan, because thanks is a very, very inadequate word, because it was a very good knowledge sharing, especially on this typical topic of MF. That is one thing. He has actually touched upon the history, he has touched upon how the regulations has come, he has touched upon various issues which is connected with that. As we travel along, we'll be able to see what is the practical difficulty, we'll be experiencing it. That is what we'll actually see today. But anyway, as a professional, we need to help the management, the people connected with the people, continuously telling them educatively what is the right thing to do. That is what we need to do. We will definitely continue to. Thanks a lot. Yeah, that is the right thing. Okay. Session is really very, very enrichable.
Yes.
And another thing is there, I just thought initially, oh, what is that mutual fund? What is very few, only 2 chapters are going to be covered, etc. and all the things. Today, if I look at the time, we are well over 1 o'clock. It is going to be 1 ton virtually. So that shows actually the deliberations and the importance of this particular session where we are actually. Thanks a lot to everybody. For me personally, it is really an enriching session. I hope it will be the same to all of you as well. Thanks a lot, Mr. Renganathan, once again. Thanks a lot for your nice presentation. Thanks a lot to one and all, to all the participants. With this, we close the session. We meet yet another session in the next Saturday.
Okay, just wanted to acknowledge, Disha has been very supportive, and also my professional colleague Archana Kemka for making this presentation. But because I sent to Disha and Sudhakar only this morning around 9 o'clock, but for her, I would not have been able to make this presentation. My just thoda moda idhar udhar, I did. So thanks to Archana too for helping me in this presentation. So thanks everyone. Thanks for your patient listening.